Welcome to Performance Driven Living, the podcast where we question everything. We don't tiptoe around tough topics, we walk right into them. Not to provoke, but to get closer to what's real. You might not agree with everything you hear, and that's okay. The show isn't about being right, it's about being real. These conversations are meant to stretch your thinking, challenge assumptions, and spark something deeper. The views shared are those of our guests and may not reflect those of the host or team. And while we dive deep into health, performance, and transformation, this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor before making changes to your health or lifestyle. Take what lands, leave what doesn't. But whatever you do, don't stop questioning.
We are here on the Performance Driven Living podcast, and I have the distinct, chore of having JP Sears join me today. And as all of you know, the goal of Performance Driven Living is for people to teach me something that I don't already know. And the challenge of this is actually because I know a lot of things. Like that's the truth. Like I know a lot of stuff. So when people come on, like I do my best to not flex a little bit on them.
That's very humble of you.
It is. It is. I'm a person of gratitude and grace. But when people come on, like I want to learn something. Like I don't want to waste my time. Like I want to actually walk away from here with something too, because I think of myself as being kind of like the voice of the people, right? And when the expert comes on, I want you to teach me something. So, Senior Sears, I'm not offended that you forgot who I was. Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit offended. It's not true. I don't. It's all
Well, don't take it personally, Mike.
Well played. Well played. Funny thing is, a lot of people just like call me Mike, so I just respond to it now. So that's actually pretty funny. So here's the deal. Like we're here talking on this podcast. I've seen you. I'll be honest with you. Like I've been a fan for a long time.
I appreciate that.
Many years gone by, when I first saw your work, and I find it hilarious because I'll say like you were the prequel to the Babylon Bee. Because Babylon Bee absolutely cracks me up today. Because
They're amazing.
It's very conservative, but I don't even think of it as conservative. It's almost like objective humor that's hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's not everybody's offended about everything humor, which is impressive. But when I'd first seen your comedy years back, and I was like, okay, this guy's funny, but for two specific reasons. One, because you've got almost this Vince Vaughn kind of comedy where it's like you don't laugh, which I think is actually really funny. To me, that's actually funnier than that, because like I'm a person that I think I'm pretty freaking funny. I'm not gonna lie, but I crack myself up.
Go on.
It's true. Right. But you'll say some of the funniest stuff and never crack a smile, and I think that's one of the funniest forms of comedy. But the other thing is like you just say what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And there's an authenticity to the humor that it's like your humor never feels contrived. So my goal on today's show is for you to teach me how to be funny.
Wonderful.
So you got your work cut out for you, buddy.
So we have, we're doing 7 hours today. Okay.
It'll be a long podcast, but well worth it by the end.
I love that. Well, thank you for the compliments, Mark.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. And
Thank you for getting my name right.
you're welcome, Mike. You mentioned the delivery. Just say that, or say something about that for a second. Like the dry delivery. I remember in my early days of doing, videos online back in 2014, what would amuse me the most in the comment section as I just start doing videos, people aren't used to knowing who I am. There was always so much confusion. People are like, is this guy serious? And other people are like, yes. And he's just a moron. And other people are like, you guys are morons. He's joking around. That dry delivery, it's just kind of my humor language. I tend to think things are funnier when they're not delivered in a over the top funny
100%.
Slapstick way. So we all, just like love languages, we all have humor languages, what makes us laugh and like how we like to express humor, that dry satirical style. It's just kind of my natural way of being.
Which I find hilarious. And I'll say like, I think I'm really funny, but the funny part about it is like the delivery, like I will throw things into conversations. Like even yesterday, we were at the inaugural dinner for the Lifelong Wellbeing Foundation. And I mean, I'm listening, I'm sitting next to Cali Means and we're watching some of these speakers. Like, I can't help myself because like some stuff just comes up and I'm like, and I'll just like throw in some random editorial in the middle of the conversation. It's like, and then the people around me are cracking up laughing and I'm just watching the show.
Yeah.
Because like, to me, I think timing is part of that dry delivery though, right? It's saying things that so I'm going to say this. I'm a big fan of like neurolinguistic programming, big fan of pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
And I think dry delivery is actually a psychological pattern interrupt.
Yeah. You know, humor in its simplest form when you boil it down, because like there's a science to it, certainly an art and a spirit to it as well. But in the simplest scientific format, humor is delivering a pattern interrupt. And when you do that, you break people's expectations, and that creates an emotional response of laughter. That's really all you're doing. And with a dry delivery, people aren't, you know, in a normal context, people aren't expecting something absurd to be said, let alone with a straight, serious face. I remember before I was doing comedy, I was a health coach. And I was working with the Czech Institute, holistic exercise, nutrition. And I was going around the world teaching their 3-day holistic lifestyle coaching workshops. And it's 24 hours of lecturing material, great information, but how are you going to hold people's attention for 24 hours? You're not. Usually after 10 minutes, people are checked out, even with great information. So as I started doing that teaching, I realized like, all right, part of the service here is kind of recapturing people's attention repeatedly. And I found the more I let my natural humor out in these like serious lecture formats, it would get their attention. And in the beginning of the 3-day workshop, you know, the room would always be divided into thirds. A third would get it. They're laughing. A third, they're just, I'm in the room with a moron. And then the middle third was they were confused. Is he joking or not? But just delivering those repeated pattern interrupts, it's a great way not only to get people to laugh, but more importantly, to pay attention to what you're talking about.
So, little known fact, I was a college professor for many years. If you can imagine that.
I can. I imagine it very well.
Okay, close your eyes. Yeah. Through that. Now imagine like suede patches on my elbows.
Yeah.
Okay, we good? All right, very good. Come back. On the count of 3, 1, 2, there we go.
It's great to be here with you, Your Honor.
Thank you. So being a college, and I used to talk about how I would teach because it's like I would teach weird topics, any number of things. And, but I used to call myself an edutainer. Yeah. Because the only way that you're ever going to, like, people don't want to know what you have to say, right? They want to be amused because you are fighting, particularly with young people nowadays with cell phones and the whole deal. Like, you have to have something that they can't get on this phone, right? That they're like simply coming to class was sometimes the struggle.
Yeah.
But it became this idea of edutainment. Like they want to know what you have to say when they're entertained by what you're saying or how you're saying it. And it really became a curveball, I think, for students. And it was like, but the funny part about it is that not only would you expect that like, if, you know, teacher evaluations and that kind of stuff always came back. And I always had high scores in that. That didn't surprise me because I think I'm pretty likable. But what we would call competency scores, and like at the end of semesters when students were giving objective tests, they actually had higher achievement levels. And I used to get questions from deans and whatever, and they'd be like, what are you doing? You know, and I'm like, I think I'm just being, because I would get somebody from, you know, the department or something would sit through a class and I'm me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to behave differently just because you're in the room. And I think that's alarming to people too. But it was literally a matter of just like, no, my students actually enjoyed learning. Yeah. So the topic was almost irrelevant, right? They were engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people, whether they're an entrepreneur, business owner, a teacher, a comedian, whatever they are, we're served well by remembering we have the message, but also the messenger. And the messenger, that's where we're going to touch lives or we're going to become irrelevant really fast. It's why people who went to college, I certainly didn't, you ask them, what's your favorite quote from a textbook from back in college? Nothing will be retained. because there was just no entertainment with it, no engagement. The message was probably great in the textbook, but it was a poor messenger. And then hopefully their professor was a better messenger, but maybe they were dry and boring. We retain nothing. But then you ask someone to recite lines from their favorite movie, that same person, they can, but can't recite a single line from a textbook because the messenger created, there was an emotional engagement. So I think people need to realize, whatever message I have, that matters. But also you are the messenger, and that's really important.
So that being said, perfect segue to where I wanted to go, and that is your message that you've been delivering clearly as a comedian, but your comedy has, I think you got into the space of comedy at a point that we started getting into cancel culture. Mm-hmm. And I mean, your height really came around the same time as people were being canceled and everybody was damn offended and, tears in the corner kind of stuff because you called me an ugly name. And it's like, but you've continued to do the exact same stuff and I'm not going to say back down because I've never really considered you to be a fighter for the cause, right? It's an unapologetic authenticity.
Yeah.
That it's not like you're trying to champion hurting people, but at the same time, you're also unapologetically calling out nonsense where nonsense exists.
Yeah.
Like what is there intentional? Is that just authentic?
Yeah, it's both. So, part of what I do with comedy is call out lies, hypocrisy, and corruption.
What?
Yeah. We're told there's none of that.
This is ridiculous.
I guess gaslighting too. And that's
heard none of that.
That started, nowadays, a lot of that takes the form of the external, whatever, the news is lying to us or this politician's corrupt. But really it started with our own egotistical nature that we all have. I started doing those videos back in 2014, poking fun at the New Age spiritual community, which I was very much a part of. It was important to me. But as I was in it, I noticed in myself and a lot of other people, there is this ravenous, egotistical nature that nobody is calling out because we're all pretending like it's not there. In our ego, like, cool, we all have it. It's not a bad thing. But if it controls you, it's going to lead to less than ideal outcomes. So our own inner liar, hypocrite, corrupter that's just out for control and a sense of significance, I was just calling that out internally so people could have a reflection. Hey, do I do that? Or I'm offended by that, which means you definitely do that. You just don't want to look at it. And then, 2020, our world really changed. And
wait, when was that?
2020. So yeah, what happened? There was a weather front from
El Nino.
A lab. Yeah, it was El Nino.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm just still doing the same thing I've always done with comedy, but the world responded different because like everything's now divided in weird ways, just literally everything. Freedom became a politically divided issue in the US.
So stupid.
So I'm someone, I like to just follow my heart. I think if there's a hack, it's like have a mind, don't be controlled by your mind, be controlled by your heart and service to God, which I think our heart is where God communicates to us. And so you mentioned unapologetic. My goal wasn't to ruffle feathers, but my goal wasn't to be intimidated by feathers when they got ruffled. Yes. Because if you're trying to call out egotistical nature, let alone in the world around us, people don't want that to happen. Some people don't want it to happen. Others are really cheering for it. Thank God someone's saying this. So just following my heart, it's like, all right, if there's smear articles written about me, that's okay. When I'm on purpose, I am just using the language of comedy to poke holes in egotistical nature, whether that's your own or it's coming from other people or politicians or health agencies.
You're making me chuckle. You're making me think of my grandfather because he used to always call me, he called me Maverick. And my grandpa was like the funniest, never intending to be funny person. Like he was not comedy funny. He was just so eccentric, and he would do this goofy stuff. And I remember we were someplace, and he's like, "That one, everyone can be thinking it, but woo, he just says it." and like the way he would say stuff, like it was so funny. But he's like, so he used to call me Maverick because he's just like, you just say what everyone else is probably thinking or afraid to say. And I'm like, but no one's ever surprised where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And there's an authenticity, I think, that resonates with people. Like I said, like I enjoyed your comedy because of the authenticity, but maybe it's because there's an authenticity I think about me too. Like I enjoy that because that's the way I am too. Like I'm not out to offend anybody, but I'm also not here to entertain your nonsense.
Right. I mean, amen to that. And with authenticity, a lot of times what works really well in comedy is you say the thing that everyone's thinking, but nobody's really saying.
And it makes everybody squirm just a little.
Yeah. So you either get cheers and laughs or you get people pissed off. But for the people that are pissed off, it resonates with them as well, because you don't get defensive about something that you yourself deep down inside don't think is true. It's kind of like the old example. If you called me an elephant, I'm not going to sit here and be defensive. It's like, oh, I don't have an emotional charge about that. But if you say, JP, you look like you're kind of aging, your hair's falling out, I might get a little defensive about that, because it's like, yeah, that's true to me.
Right.
And I don't want it to be true. Thus, you get an offended reaction.
Well, and I think that's so true, because that's one of the things that I said, like one of my claims to fame is like, it is so hard to make me feel awkward.
Yeah.
There are so few situations that ever make me awkward. Like I'll be awkward, but I'm not feeling awkward. Like you can't make me uncomfortable. And it means I can walk into just ridiculous situations and be totally normal, because other people are like, this is just, I'm like, why?
So, and to me, tell me if this is true for you or not, but to me, that would suggest that you're secure with your insecurities.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what my insecurities are.
Yeah.
But you can't poke them anymore.
Right. And you don't pretend you don't have them.
Right.
Then you're insecure with your insecurities, and you probably don't even know what they are because you don't want to look at them. But if you know what they are,
as your secrets, is that what they say? Yeah.
They do say that, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They say a lot of things.
They do.
So you said something. I was at a conference back in February, where I had graciously gotten you a gig.
Thank you for that, by the way. Excuse me, I keep coughing. I think I got monkeypox at a pickleball orgy.
Well, that tracks. That's pretty normal in your demographic. So you were at this conference, and I couldn't help but laugh because it was so uncomfortable. And again, most people know you as this more conservative skewing comic who tends to pick on more of the fringe groups. And I'm a big Bobby Kennedy fan.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. And you started your entire shtick talking about Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah.
And I almost like peed my pants at the moment, because there's no way I can possibly do it. But you started off by talking about, who here believes blah, 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 and who's here to, make America healthy again, blah, blah, blah. It was a health conference, of course. The whole place was like, rah, 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 like whatever. So they do their thing. Everybody cheers. And it's like, okay, JP got an early win. Good job. And I'm like, and right afterwards you said, and I was talking with Bobby Kennedy one day, and he turned to me and he said, JP, our oceans are poisoned with crabs, and they're giving our children Alzheimer's, and we gotta stop it. And I damn near fell out of my chair, because I'm like, dude just started this entire comedy sketch getting everybody to hype up about, who's behind this. And you made some reference to Trump, and most people clapped. And I was like, all right, that makes sense in this room. Got it. And immediately went in for a Bobby Kennedy joke. And it was making fun of the way he speaks, which is like almost like an ADA issue. And I couldn't help but crack up laughing. I was like, okay, dude's literally just swinging in the center. Like, so much comes across as being biased.
Yeah.
Because you're hitting at fringe stuff. But like, you hit Bobby Kennedy on the way he speaks, and he'd probably laugh at that, to be honest with you. But the part that makes me chuckle, I was like, all right, like this is not a conservative show. This is a right down the middle.
Yeah, something I've had to evolve into the past couple of years, because you mentioned it earlier. Some of my comedy got pretty heavy at like bashing what I don't like, bashing blue hair mentality, bashing victim mentality, bashing here's my freedoms, taking them away for my protection. That makes sense. And I realize, cool, all that has a purpose. I don't want to be stuck here. I need to also get more intentional on self-deprecation. And of course, that means like literally making fun of myself. I've always done that. But more so, making fun of what's important to me.
Even the things you value, right?
Yeah, and you know, how I make fun of it. I'm not making jokes that belittle Bobby Kennedy's policies. I love Bobby Kennedy. I'm so grateful what he's doing.
Yes.
He's a friend of mine. But it's like, yeah, we need to laugh at ourselves, not just laugh at the other people. We can do that. That's fine. But we also need to laugh at ourselves. So yeah, I'll have jokes about people I love and adore.
Yeah.
And it just needs to happen, in my opinion.
100% agree with you. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that was like a moment that stuck out to me by watching that. I was like, all right, that's actually really funny. And it almost was that uncomfortable squirm because, like, yeah, we all know how Bobby talks, but no one talks about the way Bobby talks. Like, and you just like called out the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
About, sure, Bobby talks funny and, you know, for whatever health concerns or whatnot. But it was just the audience's response, they squirmed. Like, everybody's like, like, wait a minute, am I allowed to laugh at that? Because if I laugh at that, does that mean I'm against Bobby Kennedy? Does that mean, is JP just an asshole? Like, what's going on here? And it was just this weird dynamic in the room. And I was dying. Like, I thought it was absolutely hilarious because I'm like, I love the way you just made a room uncomfortable.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, moving emotions is really the goal with comedy. External laughter, that's one form of that emotional expression of, oh, emotions are moving. There was something I expected. Then the punchline delivered something unexpected to move from what I expected to what was delivered. That movement, there's a space there, and it's an emotional space. But squirming, that's a great reaction too. That's like, you don't squirm because you're logically like, well, does that compute?
Totally.
You're squirming because you're uncomfortable. Like, I kind of want to laugh, but I definitely shouldn't. So the squirming is just an emotional reaction, but people are trying to restrict it.
So exactly. So I want to ask you a question. Like, so I've been accused of always being right. Right. I know. I know. That was intuitive for you. I didn't even need to say that, did I?
Well, I hate to interrupt you. I was wrong one time. Back in 1997, I thought I was wrong about something, but it turned out I was actually right. Okay. It was the one time I was
we're diving here. Like, this is a similar vibration. So, but here's the funny thing is because, you know, people are like, well, you always think you're right. And my response to it is, well, I'd be pretty stupid if I thought I was wrong and held that opinion, wouldn't I? You know, and normally that's met with a,
well, that makes sense.
Of course I think I'm right. Like, you think you're right. Like, that's normal. Because if I thought I was wrong, I'd change my opinion. Like,
here's the wrong answer that I'm very confident in.
Exactly. I'm confident I am wrong about this and will defend it to the death. Like, that to me is just the most illogical thing. But I watch a lot of what you do comedically, and I kind of laugh at it because I'm like, you're poking at people who think they're right about something. But I always tell people, like, I want every opinion I hold challenged.
Same, yeah.
I want it challenged because there's only two outcomes to having your opinion challenged. Either A, I defend it and grow even more resolute in my belief, or B, I discover I'm wrong and now I get to believe truth.
Yeah.
Like, and neither of those are bad outcomes. Like, those are both great outcomes. Like, so yeah, please challenge me, question me, force me to defend everything I believe, because either I'm going to know it even deeper than I did before, which is a win, or I'm going to realize I was wrong and change my opinion. when I listen to a lot of the comedy you do, and just the stuff you do is disarming, but it's that evocative type language. And when people squirm, I think when people squirm, they're in that space.
Yeah.
They're in he just said something that was really uncomfortable, and I either have to laugh at it and acknowledge that that's actually accurate and I believe it, and that kind of makes me ridiculous for believing it. Or the alternative is like, I'm willing to accept that that is funny about my cause or funny about my party or whatever, and accept it anyways, right? But it forces that inflection point.
Yeah.
That's the squirm.
It's a squirm. And I think such an important factor to a growth mindset is someone who's willing to change their beliefs, whether it's like change them 180 degrees, like, whoa, I was completely wrong. That happens once in a while, and that's great. Other times it's like, oh, here's my belief. It had that blemish on it. Yeah, I can see that's true. There is a flaw in this thing, I believe. Doesn't mean I have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's like, yeah, I can see that fault. I think laughter, the court jester making fun of the thing that's so important helps you see some of the faults. And just for a great life, I think the mindset where someone can say, I have my beliefs, but I question my beliefs, as opposed to the mindset of certainty that says, I have my beliefs and I believe my beliefs.
So what's the dumbest thing someone's ever said to defend themselves?
It's not so much what they say, but what they do. And it's being emotionally reactive. If you watch some of these like debates, which I find so annoying, I hate watching them, but it's great they happen. Like you see a Charlie Kirk go onto a college campus, people like that. It's obnoxious to watch because they're just filming content for social media. But when he's having an intellectual debate with a college student, as soon as the college student's belief meets a limiting factor, as in this is going to be flawed,
it's crisis point.
You just see them get emotionally reactive. And that's not necessary. I think that's the opposite of growth. If your belief's feeling challenged, instead of getting emotionally reactive because you're scared, you feel self-identified with your belief, and therefore kind of like you start behaving in a way as though your life depends on this belief being true because you're self-identified with it. You don't have beliefs, but you are the beliefs. You get emotionally reactive, outrage. But ideally, as humans, we realize, hey, if I never changed my mind about anything, life would be crappy. Can you imagine at third grade, you've never changed your mind since then? It'd just be like if you never change your clothes since third grade, that wouldn't be half as ridiculous as if you never change your mind after third grade.
Yeah.
So we find security in keeping everything the same. Our beliefs never change. It's not correlated to truth. It's just correlated to we feel more secure. But a great growth mindset, whether your belief is challenged because you're squirming, you're wanting to laugh, or you're just in conversation, is seek to understand more. Well, tell me more. I never thought of that. And it doesn't mean you're automatically going to change your mind. But if you're presented with good evidence, like, please change your mind to whatever degree you're compelled to. So, by the way, that's called freedom. You're 100%. Living under the tyranny of your own ego if you are so scared that you only believe your beliefs.
Yes. Yes. Which does actually bring me a question for you. Like, how did your parents react when you told them you wanted to be a comic?
Well, I didn't tell them. They haven't found out.
I don't know that bodes well for you.
Yeah. It's weird. My comedy career, and I like to say I'm not living the life of my dreams. I'm living the life beyond what I ever dreamt.
Yeah.
So I never said, hey, mom and dad, I want to be a comedian. In fact, what really scared them is, I think in the year 2000, I said, I'm dropping out of college. I don't know what's for me. I just know this isn't for me. That scared them. And then a few months later, I said, hey, I'm moving out to San Diego from Ohio to study with this holistic health guy named Paul Chek. And they basically said, cool. When that fails, you can always come home.
Right. They said, well, we have a daughter too.
Yeah. Yes. So we're 1 for 2. so that was where they were really scared. But 13 years later, when my comedy started, they had already, I think, gained a sense of security of JP figures things out. Like I was making a good living, having great purpose as a health coach and teaching. And then my comedy career started as a happy accident. I'm going to make a video, thought it would be a one-time thing, but as it just grew over the course of a year or two, opportunities start opening up. They were just so stoked. They've been so supportive. Anytime I'm doing a comedy show, usually within a 4-hour drive of them, they're there. I mean, I'm surprised they're not sick of watching me, but they are so supportive and so proud of this career that's accidentally blossomed for me.
I love that. That's fun. We were talking beforehand about our parents and how your parents want you to be supported. They want you around, so on and so forth. And I think one of the best compliments I got from my parents somewhat recently, I have a younger sister, and they're always making sure that things are planned for her, that she's taken care of, that, we need to make sure that when we're gone, that everything's okay for her. And, she's getting married soon. And they're like, hope she's not listening to this, but they're like, we're getting prenups. Like, they're making,
I recommend it.
Yeah. Like they're making sure that all this kind of stuff is in line. And then what's funny is that they said something, I was like, I'm cool. Like, and they were talking about, I forget what it was. And they actually looked at like, we don't worry about you.
Yeah.
Like literally, like you've proven yourself. Like there's literally no concern. Like if we're dead and we give you anything, like please go enjoy it. Like it has nothing to do with structuring it, some kind of something to make sure like you're fine. Like you never cross our mind in that capacity. And it's like, that's a compliment, right?
It really is. I mean, we all want it, and
we all want that validation.
We do. And so grateful we're in the position where our at least my parents are still around. I know you have your dad and stepmom. We all want their love and connection, but to your point, I think for parents to say, we don't feel the need to protect you, to look out for you, what a compliment. Because to me that says we see you as a man who's on purpose, who's got things taken care of.
Yeah, and it really is. And I think it doesn't matter. Like I told you, I'm going to be 50 in a month. And it's funny because at 50 years old, 49, that compliment from your parents is validating. And I'm like, am I just immature that felt nice?
It might be codependent, and I'm sure it is, but it's great.
But yeah, it felt nice. Like there's something that your dad can say to you that no one else in the world can.
100%.
And I think that was maybe a moment that I had wanted for a long time, and it was nice to receive that.
Yeah.
Which does bring me to a question, because so much of your shtick has been very much, particularly after 2020, and this whole topic of toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And you've gone, I almost used the phrase, toxic masculinity. You just went hard on at it. And that probably would have been a terrible play on words, but use that as you will. But the reality is like the toxic masculinity has, and we're seeing somewhat of a shift, like even in the political spectrum, we're seeing this shift that it's almost like, we had an election and now daddy's home kind of weird kind of shit and whatever. Like not to make it political, but how do you stand up in that space? Because there has been I don't even know what I want to say to that. Like there's almost become like this androgynous kind of middle zone where men and women are all living in, but there is let a man be a man, let a woman be a woman, and anybody in the middle, that's cool too.
Yeah.
But don't shame anybody for being masculine or being feminine. Like all of it's okay. That's freedom, right?
People have gotten weak. And I think a contributing factor is there has been some terrible messaging. It's just like getting workout advice. You implement the advice and you get weaker. Some of the advice is essentially boiled down to, on the whole in society, teaching men to behave like women, shaming their masculinity, and then teaching women to behave like men. Like, hey, feminists, go, you to be a powerful woman, you need to go get the good job or start a business, then you'll be happy. We all know, like, money, status, achievements, that's not going to actually fulfill you, but that's the messaging. And then telling men to behave like women and telling men not to treat women right. Like, don't hold the door open for her. That's toxic masculinity, or a man doesn't need to pay for things. Now, men and women as individuals, obviously do what the hell you want. Totally. Live how if you're a woman and you want to raise kids, do that. If you're a woman and want to start a business, do that. If you're a man, do what you want to do. Don't violate other people. But I think it almost looks intentional to me, messaging that is just shaming healthy masculinity, get that labeled as toxic masculinity, and doing the same thing to women, like telling women, hey, toxic masculinity is really bad, look out for it. But you should actually behave that way. So I think we're now on the other side of it. There's still the residual fog, but I think we've done a good job of waking up to, like, that is a really crappy message. That does not work for men or women. And actually telling men and women how to behave when they're adults, that might be the first flaw. I mean, if you're a woman or a man out there, you're a grown adult listening to mainstream media on how you should behave, you are putting yourself in the position of a child, wanting to be told how
to tell you what to do.
Yeah, we have these things called natural instincts that will come out mixed with your personality and your discernment, hopefully good values as well. And that should maybe determine how you behave, not like these societal standards or Hollywood, the most morally bankrupt people you'll ever find,
Fair.
Having them tell you how to behave. It's like, yeah, children maybe need to be told how to behave somewhat, but if you're an adult listening to how you should behave, you are not functioning like an adult.
So what has been your best shtick on toxic masculinity? Because you've made it a topic so many times.
Yeah, there's a few videos in a series called How to Be a Real Man. You definitely need a lot of chainsaws, things like that. So that's some important messaging out there.
I see that. Well, I live in a high-rise condo, so chainsaws are usually not allowed.
Oh, well, real men don't follow rules, especially when it comes to chainsaws.
So I actually have a not follow the rules in the condo association story for you, which is somewhat coincidental, but this goes back to the I'm funny. 2020, tired of lockdown. I live in South Florida, but I also live in Broward County, which is the bluest county of all of Florida. So it's kind of like this little island of insanity. And everybody's like, you're in Florida, you don't even have COVID. Without, like, oh no, I'm in Broward. We're locked down, don't worry. And I ended up throwing a party around Christmas. But
so that's Christmas, end of 2020?
End of 2020. So we had been nonsense for 9 months or so. So I ended up throwing this holiday party and probably had like 30, 40 people over to my house, right? Total super spreader event, and have them all over. But I'd made a Facebook invite for it. And the Facebook invite, actually, at the top, it was titled Holiday Protest. And so to the entire body, to the invite, which the funny part of the story comes later. So I was like, I'm inviting you all to a holiday protest, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to serve food and drinks to make sure that anybody protesting too hard is at least fed and well hydrated,
great.
Blah, blah, blah. So it's 30, 40, 50 people or whatever all come over. And again, I live in a high-rise condo, so a bunch of old people in this building. You can imagine, like, all these strangers are walking through the building to get up the elevator and stuff like that. And it's, everybody in town is like running and hiding their pets. The following week, this was over a weekend, and I get an email from the association letting me know that I have violated, subcontract rule number 15.4 and citing the county rules of gathering restriction sizes, and I'm only allowed to have 5 people at a time, and it was this whole deal about county ordinance this and citation after citation after citation. And of course, being a jerk, I end up replying, and my reply was, I am so sorry for this misunderstanding. I understand exactly, and I will strictly adhere to county policy, but I do want to point out to you, here's a screenshot of the invitation that had gone out. This was not a holiday party. In fact, this was a protest. And in accordance with county ordinance, blah, 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 protests can happen up to 50 people without there being any fear of infection and so on.
Well, yeah, when you follow the science,
I made everybody stand at least 6 feet apart. But we went through this whole deal, and it was like the fact that they got this letter back saying, no, I had a protest, and the protest didn't violate any county, literally never heard back.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's
And
beautiful.
I was like, I was just being a smartass to begin with, and then it actually turned out perfect because like my response kind of set itself up, and I'm like, but I laughed though because I'm like, guys, part of comedy is this idea of pointing out the ludicrous.
Yeah.
Like, if we get together for a Christmas party, 5 people, you know, people are having to have 2 different Thanksgivings because the whole family can't come together. But if we're all out in the street, then it's cool.
Yeah.
Like we can fight together in a protest. And it's like pointing out to them the incongruence of the county ordinances that if I was having a protest at my house, we were good.
Yeah.
But if it was a party at my house, we were probably all going to be dead in a week.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, pointing out the absurdities part of comedy, and hopefully whoever was reading that email got a laugh. But either way,
not sure about that.
At least they shut up about it. But yeah, you know, I think the court jester archetype, which we all have access to, like
Yep.
some people think, well, I'm not a comedian, I'm not funny. It's like, no, you have your 5 senses. You also have a sense of humor. That's one of the senses as well, whether it's well developed or less developed, that's to be determined. But the court jester, part of its job is to highlight the absurdities. That way you're not limited by the absurdities, you go beyond them. And COVID sure served up here. I mean, back in 2015, if someone would have written all the absurdities into a slapstick movie script, it would have been too over the top. 6 feet apart and all these stupid rules based on nothing. And, you know, protests are super. They're actually really important. But gatherings, that's like a suicide cult. So many absurdities to point out.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it absolutely was amazing. It just was off the charts. But so all the absurdities, living through strange times. You're a dad now. How has that changed your boldness?
Oh, dramatically. I'll tell you. So my son, I learned he was on the way in spring of 2020. So it was perfect storm. Like all these absurdities, freedoms are like wanting to be eroded if you allow it.
You're like, oh, good. I brought somebody into this.
Yeah. I mean, there was that fear
Plus
initially. And up until that point, I'd been doing self-development for 20 years at that point. And like the parts of me that were really developed as a man were like compassion, perspective, awareness, questioning myself, not believing my beliefs, finding the meaning of things. What was completely undeveloped was like the warrior archetype, the bold, fierce lion. So the perfect storm of COVID and all the restrictions, but really my son coming into the world, that brought the boldness out of me like I had never seen, but always wanted and needed. It just wasn't online. So having my little guy, knowing he's coming into the world, like I just wanted, like, the world needs to be a better place for my son. The protector instinct comes out where you're willing to self-sacrifice it to any level. So being a father, I mean, it very much really helped me develop that warrior archetype. Be bold, be fierce. Don't worry about being the nice guy all the time. Don't worry about people's approval, people pleasing. All that goes out the window compared to the priority of this little human being.
Yeah.
So yeah, having my son come into the world really helped me be a complete man. Not to say like I'm complete, like I'm done, so much to grow, but man, I was so incomplete before him.
I love that because one of the things that I see, like, you know, a man is either that warrior and he's going to go take on the world and then has a child and kind of calms down.
Yeah.
Right. You see a lot of that. But you're giving the opposite story. Like,
Yeah.
like, I actually was very much into self-improvement, development, so on. And then like all of a sudden this warrior archetype took place. And it reminds me, a good friend of mine and former roommate, last few years, I would say, got married, had a baby and so on. And I reached out to him recently, and it was last year, because all of a sudden he is like election stuff all over the place and so on. And it's funny because in years gone by, he would almost razz me as being too outspoken about stuff and having opinions and politics. And he's like, I'm apolitical. I don't care. I was born in Canada. What does it matter? Like this whole deal. And finally one day I sent a message. I'm like, who is this? Like, what just happened? And he's like, Jubilee.
Yeah.
And that's his daughter's name, obviously. And he's just like, Juby. And he's like, and I was like, unpack that. Like, I want to know beyond that. And he's like, there's purpose in what I leave behind now. And he's like, I can't raise a child in a situation that I don't agree with. And it's like, and his boldness and his outspokenness and his willingness to go out there. It was just funny because like his entire Facebook feed for years prior was like quotes from the Bible and all this other kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden it's all this controversial stuff. And I'm like, dude, like what just happened here? Right. And he's like, no. And he's like, my daughter. And it's like, it brought out that the passivity went away and the warrior showed up. And I was like, that's cool.
I mean, if you want to see people who like tyrants fear the most, it's parents. I mean,
it's the Maha moms.
Yeah, it really is. If you want to unlock your power as a human, you have to live for something greater than yourself. If you don't, eventually you'll become controllable. But if you're living for something greater than yourself, and by the way, kids are the greatest thing to live for, greater than yourself. And of course, there's purpose, there's mission, that can qualify too. But kids are just like a no-brainer. Those are people who are willing to die for their cause.
Yeah.
They are on the hill they are willing to die on. And it's not for themselves, it's for their children. Right. And those are very powerful people.
And you can't threaten a man who's willing to die.
100%. You know, the old saying, it's better to die on your feet than live on your knees. Parents, you know, if you're a good parent, you're willing to die on your feet.
I love that.
Yeah.
And dude, go ahead.
I was going to say, you mentioned some men have like the warrior already awakened, then they have a baby. Mine was the opposite. I heard a quote recently. I forget who said it. Doesn't matter. I'll butcher it. But they said, being a real man means you're developed enough where you can slit someone's throat and hold a baby all in the same day. Now, obviously, hopefully you don't need to slit someone's throat.
I normally limit that to Wednesdays.
Wednesdays is good. Throat slitting Saturdays is my cup of tea, but
okay. Well, it's Wednesday today, so caution.
No knives behind there. But that just represents that warrior archetype. I think to be a complete man, you need to have access to both, not just be stuck in one. Like, I can only be the warrior no matter what the circumstance, or I can only be the tender, compassionate, vulnerable, no matter what the circumstance. And fighter. But if you can access whatever kind of qualities you need given the situation, you're a pretty darn powerful person.
That's masculinity.
Yeah. Amen to that.
It's
complete masculinity. You got the full 360 degrees of masculine tools.
100%. Well, JP, I expected you to come in here and teach me how to be funny, but it's actually been a pleasure, like kind of getting to know more about you as a man, and you know what makes you tick, and you know what's been the inspiration for your comedy. What thoughts would you leave us with at the end of this? Like, it's been great just getting to sit and chit chat, not even do a comedy shtick. I mean, you're friggin' hilarious. But what would you leave listeners with?
Yeah, you know, this will sound cliche. Follow your heart. I think we're living in a time where the world needs God more than ever. And I'm not going to quote Bibles and stuff like that, but I'll just say, practically speaking, I think God communicates to people through our hearts. We all have like what we want. And I think if we can surrender what we want to what wants to live through us, we're going to be living much more in our power zone. Like, don't be seduced by what you want. Be motivated by it. Go after it, but abandon it when something greater than your own wants comes up. And I don't think our mind's really going to generate that. Our mind might start to become aware of it. But I think as humans, our superpower is our hearts. You look at the people that you admire the most who deserve it. There's someone who is following their heart. So I think never discount it, having the awareness of what your heart is telling you, and then the courage to follow it. It makes people just have more purpose, more fulfillment, and contribute to a greater world around them like nothing else can.
I love that. Thank you for that, especially when you're delivering such a powerful message in a absolutely hilarious way and really making people squirm at that, because it's like you're almost like watching a train wreck at the side of the road, right? Like I shouldn't be listening, but I can't look away. It's like, but there's such a powerful message, but because of the way that you're delivering it, it is edutaining people into a new awareness. And I appreciate that there's people like you out there doing that. So appreciate you being here, man.
Amen. Thank you for having me, Mark.
I appreciate it. So there will be contact information for JP Sears. Certainly more of you know who he is than you know who I am, but look in the notes and you'll find out how to get a hold of him. Is there anything in particular that people should be looking for? Any particular platform where you really want them to search for you? YouTube?
You know, my website is AwakenWithJP.com. That has links to everything else. And on socials, everything is AwakenWithJP.
Awesome. So check out Awaken with JP and look for him. Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, all this kind of stuff. You're on all the handles, obviously. We'll put all of them here in the show notes. So take a look and go follow JP. The dude's hilarious.
Thank you for thinking so, Mark. Appreciate you, brother.
I do.